I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect Studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your councillor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Well, hello, welcome to VLGA Connect. Friday rolls around again, and today it's TGU with me and with him, Tony Rownick. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. It's September too. September.
Oh, yes. And supposedly it's spring.
Supposedly spring.
Yeah.
Carlton are in the finals. It feels like the mid-1990s for me.
Is football's still a thing, is it?
Yeah, it is, Chris. Yeah. It still happens in Victoria, but as a Carlton supporter, we're smiling, which has been a while. We're in with
Excellent.
a bit of a chance. Yeah.
Well done. No Julie this week, folks. Julie is winging her way to the UK, and perhaps next week we might get a report from Julie on how she's finding her time over there. I think she's interested to present some insights into what's a pretty trying time for local government in the UK at the moment. But no shortage of things happening back here, Tony, and we might whip through some of the stories of the week, many of which have a legal flavour. So can you remember a time when there's been so many of these sorts of stories around?
I was going to say, the last few weeks, it's like it's become very judicial, the show, folks. Sorry, but I haven't read this many court reports since university, the late 1980s at Melbourne University. So, but I'm resisting the wig today. So.
But thank you. I think on behalf of everyone, I say thank you. Let's head up to the rural city of Mildura and a story that received quite a bit of media coverage this week. The celebrity chef, as they call him, but also councillor, Stefano De Pierre, found to have misused his position in relation to the CEO recruitment process a year or so back.
Yeah, he pled guilty to some charges in the Magistrates Court up there in Mildura this week. As you say, Section 123 of the Local Government Act, which was the basis for the charges, misuse of position. The reminder there for everyone is that it's about an intentional use of one's position to gain an advantage for someone else. The facts here was about a CEO interview panel. Councilor De Pierre was a member of that panel. On a particular day in June 2021, there were two candidates to be interviewed. The first interview took place, and then during a break between interviews, Councilor De Pierre was observed texting on his phone, and it was apparent that he was texting the second candidate who was about to be interviewed, and as the evidence came out, was coaching, if you like, sending a message, make a deal of gender stuff was the comment. Councilor De Pierre, as I say, did plead guilty, described his behaviour as a brain fart.
And that's become the headline, a brain fart breach, yes.
So that led to a suspended sentence, I think a 3-month suspended sentence, and a significant fine that Councilor De Pierre has had to pay. A good reminder, I think, for councillors, and sanctions would normally be much more severe. In this case, Councilor De Pierre pled guilty. There was no evidence of collusion. The candidate, I should say, who ultimately wasn't appointed, the candidate in question didn't receive the messages in the evidence because their phone had been turned off at the time anyway. So again, no collusion. Councilor De Pierre, as you know, is well known, recently received an Order of Australia medal. Councillors should be aware that normally this sort of behaviour in different circumstances could lead to up to a 5-year jail sentence. So just a good reminder to councillors about bearing in mind that always they must not misuse their position to advantage a person.
So just remind me, which court was it? Was this a magistrate?
Judge? It was Magistrates Court.
Yeah. I think I read the magistrate took into account the good character of the councillor, but also consideration to, as you say, normally perhaps more serious sanctions, but they would have prevented Stefano De Pierre from remaining as a councillor, wouldn't they, if they'd been imposed?
Oh yeah, that would be. There was no conviction recorded in this case, but if this would be an indictable offence if a conviction was recorded, and as you say, a maximum penalty of up to 5 years in prison. So absolutely, that would be would mean the councillor would be disqualified from taking their position.
So a cautionary tale, as you say, and as I think back, Tony, and I'm not for 1 minute saying definitively that these two things were linked, but that CEO process took quite some time, and it did stop and restart at a later stage. So if the two are linked, it's another sign of how serious the implications for getting these processes wrong can be on the organisation.
Agreed. Very serious implications here. Other councillors involved in observing the behaviour, and no doubt, providing evidence to for the prosecutors, etc. So, as you say, a cautionary tale, and one for all of us to bear in mind.
All right. So we can put that one to rest for now. Another case that has been going on for quite some time and appears to be done with now, Tony. Hume City Council has withdrawn its appeal against a VCAT ruling that exonerated one of its councillors, Trevor Dance, of serious misconduct. Now, you might just want to take us back and step us through what's occurred in this case.
Yeah, long history. Four key stages here, Chris and viewers. March 2021, we start where Councillor Trevor Dance initiated an internal arbitration process under the Councillor Code of Conduct framework against a colleague councillor, Councillor Jack Medcraft, related to some comments Mr. Medcraft had made at a council meeting about monitoring by the EPA of a tip and how often that monitoring occurred. An arbiter was appointed. A directions hearing was set, all quite usual so far, but the directions hearing was set to be held in person at council premises, and Councillor Dance didn't attend that directions hearing, or in fact didn't attend as well the subsequent hearing. In the lead up to both the directions hearing and the hearing, Councillor Dance sent various emails through communicating to the arbiter and the councillor conduct officer that, giving reasons why he wouldn't be able to appear in person, namely had some concerns for his safety, his health, certain health concerns as well, and wanted a virtual hearing. But the hearing proceeded in person in July 2021. Councillor Medcraft attended, and both Councillor Dance and Medcraft put written submissions to the arbiter, and the arbiter determined that there was no misconduct by Councillor Medcraft, had no intention to mislead with his comments, was a determination, but the arbiter went on to say that there'd been a failure to comply with the council internal arbitration process by Councillor Dance's failure to attend. And so that determination by the arbiter was then picked up, I think, by the rest of the council, and I imagine on some legal advice, council then through its representative, the mayor, made an application for a councillor conduct panel in relation to the allegation that Councillor Dance had been guilty of serious misconduct by allegedly, failing to comply with the council's arbitration process by failing to attend in person. So we get to now stage 2, the councillor conduct panel.
Bear with us, folks. I think you did say there's 4 stages here, Tony.
That's right. And Councillor Dance contended to that panel that, his mental health had made it impossible for him to comply with the arbiter direction to appear in person. But the councillor conduct panel didn't agree. They made reference to Councillor Dance having attended a council function sort of contemporaneously around this time where others were present, including Councillor Medcraft. And the councillor conduct panel decided that Councillor Dance had engaged in serious misconduct and determined for there to be a 3-month suspension. Now, Councillor Dance promptly appealed that. We get to stage 3 then, and that was the VCAT appeal by Councillor Dance. It was heard in November, a decision in December of last year. VCAT president, Justice Quigley, heard the matter, and she took the view that failure to comply, as that term is written in the Local Government Act, as a example of a serious misconduct offence, failure to comply with an arbiter's requirement doesn't include where there's an inability to comply. In this case, an inability to comply due to some health issues, you know, it's the mental health issues, the anxiety, etc. So, and Justice Quigley said, you know, it was unfathomable that, you know, and in the current context of the current times, with, you know, post COVID-19, that a request to conduct an arbiter hearing online would be seen as somehow sort of inconsistent with confidentiality requirements in the Local Government Act. So the VCAT decision also rejected the relevance of this attendance at this other council function. So that's quite a different situation. There'd be a lot of people present. You could attend with, you know, some personal support, quite different to perhaps attending a contested VCAT, contested arbiter case. Council then appealed, and this is the final part, folks. Council then sought leave to appeal to the Court of Appeal of the Supreme Court of Victoria. And last week, after a short sort of part hearing, an hour or so, Council withdrew its application for leave to appeal, and the Court of Appeal then ordered that Council pay 50% or half of Councillor Dance's associated costs. I haven't seen the transcript of the Supreme Court consideration. I'm obviously not representing either of the parties, but I have seen statements from both Councillor Dance and Hume City Council, and Councillor Dance's statement is, you know, critical of Council's decision to apply for leave to appeal to the court, the Supreme Court of Appeal. Refers to the cost to Council and therefore the community. It was critical of that decision, particularly it being made in a closed council meeting. Sheena Frost, the CEO of Hume City Council, has issued a statement pointing out that, you know, Council decisions to appeal were based on, you know, legal advice. We're also following, were consistent with the arbiter's original decision, the Council Code of Conduct panel decision, and she points out that, you know, no one wins here. She also points to the, you know, complicated councillor conduct framework presently. It's complex, it's expensive.
Flawed is the word that she used.
Yeah, needs fixing, all those. And I think there's probably a consistent view largely across the sector that is the case. But we should say, you know, to be fair to Councillor Dance, we should say the position is that there is now the VCAT case stands. There's no finding of serious misconduct in regard to these matters against him, and that remains the case.
Yeah. So he's clearly been vindicated on this matter. The CEO's comments, I want to ask you a couple of questions here, Tony, if you don't mind. Sheena Frost talks about there being a different interpretation at every stage of the process of what constitutes serious misconduct. Given that this appeal was withdrawn, and we don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, a decision as such, are we still in the dark a bit on this definition or this interpretation of what constitutes serious misconduct?
Well, we go back to the decision then of Justice Quigley, the VCAT court president,
right,
which goes to that question of compliance with an arbiter decision. So it's very clear that the Local Government Act does say that if you fail to comply with an arbiter decision, that would be serious misconduct. But what we know is that from the VCAT decision that if you're unable to comply, you're not just choosing not to comply. And in this case, the VCAT felt that there was an inability to comply because of one's medical position. then that would not constitute just a failure. So it seems like we're talking about it now, a deliberate failure, rather than, I couldn't attend because, there was no one who could take me there, or I couldn't, I'm speculating now, but clearly it means that where there's an inability to comply, that will not amount to a failure to comply under the legislation, and then therefore won't amount to automatically a serious misconduct finding.
How serious a concern do you think this would be within the halls of state government, local government, Victoria, etc., given the recent decision about the arbiters finding at Stonington, another one on appeal that we're yet to see the outcome from? Given this outcome and the comments that the legal framework is flawed, how concerned should we be, and should people within power be, about the framework and what to do from this point on?
I would say I would put this in, just one of consistent set of messages coming through, monitor reports, representations from, the sector organisations like LG Pro, VLGA, MAV, etc., that are consistently saying, look, we find this council of conduct framework quite complex, expensive, hard to understand, and not very attractive. As a lawyer, what I'd say is it's not very old, this process. It might seem old. It's been around this entire term of council, but that's not long in terms of the evolution of the interpretation and of the law. And this is a decision that sort of adds to that interpretation. But I suspect that the state parliament will want to make changes to the council of conduct framework as we move towards, a new election cycle in late 2024.
And with the Operation Sandon recommendations yet to be responded to as well, which will all go into the mix, I'm sure. It just feels like it's getting very messy, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah. All right, so that draws a line under that one. Here's one now that we're going to be wondering about for a while. Emerged in the media last night, reports in The Age that 4 of the councillors at Moonee Valley have had their phones seized by IBAC and data copied from those devices. I think they've all got their devices back. But what do we know about what this is in relation to?
According to the media reports, which, as you say, have been confirmed by some of the councillors in question, IBAC are investigating land use by a local soccer club and relationships with councillors. It's not unusual for there to be IBAC investigations into local government. It's probably what's unusual here is that we know about it and there's been a media report. IBAC have declined to comment, as they usually do on these things. We stress that we aren't saying that any of those councillors or the local soccer club indeed have acted improperly. There's just apparently an investigation. Various councillors come out and said we're cooperating, we've handed devices over, etc. So we're careful not to jump to conclusions about the outcome. But yes, clearly, there's some things of interest for IBAC currently, and they're looking into them.
So, Tony, I think you made the point to me before we started recording today that there's probably processes like this going on all the time. We don't necessarily know about them. This one has just happened to make the media.
Absolutely. And I've seen statistics that IBAC receive, literally, I think thousands of notifications about local government a year, and they conduct, I think, commence hundreds of investigations. Now, some of those investigations might be as much as, making some phone calls. Others might go to issuing warrants and looking, as you say, here at data and devices. So this one is still playing out, and it remains to be seen whether IBAC take it to the next step in terms of, a conclusion or report.
Can I play devil's advocate, though, just given that they get so many, they're not going to go to the extent of seizing phones, copying data, etc., unless it's sort of reached some level of suspicion that some conduct's occurred somewhere.
There's certainly
conduct.
a threshold for IBAC to
That's the word. Thank
act,
you,
and
Mr. Lawyer.
the threshold is the date that there's the reasonable suspicion, I think, of some level of corrupt conduct.
All right. So we'll keep an eye on that one if there's any more reporting on that. We're going to come back to Hume in a moment too with another story that's emerged this week. But this one I know you found really interesting because it may set some sort of a precedent in planning decisions, Tony. Sunlight has had a win in Marybeck.
Yeah. This is a VCAT hearing actually last month, but only sort of reported in the Age this week. And it related to a decision by Marybeck Council to reject an application by a developer for a 7-story apartment building. And Council's basis for rejecting that application was partly based on the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act and a view that there's a right to privacy and protection of the child. And the facts here were that there was a family who had bought into a property prior to a change in planning controls for the adjacent premises. The adjacent premises was the one to be developed to the 7-story building. And that family had a housebound autistic child who, was confined to the home largely, and there would be substantial overlooking and a significant reduction in sunlight hours for the backyard and into that home if this 7-story development went ahead. Now,
and I think, Tony, one of the points was that the backyard is really important as a measure for calming and managing the autistic child's life, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that was certainly a key piece. And so when this got to VCAT, the developer, I think, probably based on an understanding that many sort of planning lawyers and town planners would have currently, sought to argue at VCAT that, you can't raise these grounds. So this is in the preliminary proceedings before VCAT, asked VCAT to strike out any grounds put by other parties that raise this Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities and this, rights of the child, rights to sunlight, etc. And VCAT declined to strike out that ground, and that then resulted in the parties reaching an agreement by way of a compromise and some revised plans. So what it means going forwards, this decision, whilst the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, the rights to sunlight, the rights of the child weren't argued before VCAT at a merits hearing, VCAT have said, well, we're prepared to entertain an argument on these things. We're not just going to rule those grounds out and not listen to you. So it does open up another avenue of consideration for objecting parties, councils who have concerns about development to argue at VCAT. So, it will be, I think, poured over by the statutory planners and the lawyers that represent them.
Interesting. All right. It'd be interesting to see what further decisions are impacted by that precedent happening, and you can read all of that in the Age this week. As I said, we want to go back to Hume, and this is a story that a few people have brought to our attention this week. The council met on Monday night. There was a notice of motion brought forward by the aforementioned Councillor Trevor Dance, seeking the council's support to cease its membership of LG Pro, the professional peak body in the sector in Victoria. That vote ended up getting through with the support of the mayor, but not necessarily for the reasons that Councillor Dance had brought it forward. And there's quite a long but very eloquent statement from the mayor if you get the chance to go back and watch. And Tony, this is basically about concerns on the stand that LG Pro has taken to the culture review and the behaviour of councillors.
Yes. So as you say, Councillor Dance, the mover of the motion, spoke about, they're a lobbying group for council employees, which is true. That's who LG Pro represent, the staff at councils and the CEOs. And Councillor Dance said, well, they're it's like they don't have the interest of councillors at heart. Why should the council be paying for this? But the Mayor's speech in support of Councillor Dance's motion pointed to some media statements by LG Pro and the LG Pro president, Leanna Thompson, some months ago, that were reported some months ago, and a statement issued quite some months ago, where LG Pro had been critical of poor behaviour by some councillors in the sector and had called for greater code of conduct penalties to manage this poor behaviour, and that got widespread media. At the time, Councillor Joseph Huile, the Mayor, thought that he said that was he felt it was maternalistic language. He thought that it was a draconian call by LG Pro for, longer suspensions, greater fines against councillors, and felt that it wasn't appropriate. And so he based his it seemed seemingly he based his view that Hume Council should withdraw from LG Pro largely on this particular experience.
He did say he hoped it would send a message. And ultimately it won the day in terms of the votes. The impact of this, there's a few elements to this that we probably should just talk about briefly. The impact of this is that the council, as I understand it, withdraws its corporate membership of LG Pro. Individual members of staff can maintain membership if they so choose. But what it also means is that Hume won't be able to enter for any of the awards programs. Their people won't be able to participate in, and look, I've got a prior association with LG Pro, I must declare, but they are very highly regarded leadership programs that they run. So members of that council won't be able to participate in those, as I understand it. So it will have some implications for the organisation.
I think there might have been some mention in the debate that there is a way you can apply, like say non-members can seek to be recognised in these awards, but as you say, clearly there's a much less likelihood that a council is not a member being considered for an award. There's also, as you say, training that's provided to council members, councillors, even where council's a member of LG Pro. So that will be different unless, of course, those members take out an individual subscription, which they're entitled to. And certainly the councillors who voted for this motion made the point that they weren't wanting to prevent council staff from becoming members on an individual basis. Look, I see both sides of this. I know Leanna and Joseph quite well. They're both really impressive people, as is, and LG Pro provides I think a really valuable service to the sector. And I think, this might be a case of a discussion between the two parties, perhaps about, what was intended with that media release. We know how it was reported. I'm not sure whether comments were accurately reported or not, but it was part of I think a consistent message going through the local government sector at the time, that there was quite a lot of concerns at the time about certain behaviours that were being evidenced by a minority of councillors, and clearly that was the intent of LG Pro, I think. Yeah. But it's the right of council to decide where, councillors to decide, where the budget is allocated. And I certainly believe they had the right to make this determination.
Yeah, absolutely. No question there. So let's see what happens next. You make the good point that the way it was reported is not necessarily the way it was intended to be presented. If you read the submission, the tone is obviously more measured than it comes out in a media report. So let's see what happens next. As you say, I think that's probably a good course of action if Leanna and Joseph were to sit down and just be clear about where each are coming from. I do want to make one point, Tony, that with the culture review, that really hasn't gone anywhere at this point. There was a clear message, I think, from the government to say, over to you, local government sector, to tell us how you think we should go forward here. LG Pro has put up its hand and said, okay, this is what we think. And the rest has been crickets until now.
Yeah, we haven't, a lot of silence. Now, I guess the government would say, well, we were waiting on Operation Sandon to a degree,
Yeah,
but
true.
but then we haven't heard a lot since Operation Sandon either. Although we understand a housing strategy is likely to be released in the near term by the state government, and we'll look to that with interest. But of course, these issues of councillor conduct are far beyond merely, planning, the way planning decisions are made at councils, and go to all sorts of aspects of council's operations. And we await a response from the government.
And I do agree with one of the things that I agree with a lot of what Joseph Wheel said, but one of them is that, it is putting a light on behaviour of councillors when it is the vast majority of councillors that are doing the right thing. It's a minority of those who are creating, I guess, all this angst and leading to potentially, some would argue, disproportionate responses. Let's leave that one there. Quick update on countbacks. The last one on the list to be resolved has been resolved at Greater Geelong. Elise Wilkinson was elected there this week to the position that was held by Stephanie Asher. And for the first time that I can remember, there's no current extraordinary vacancy waiting to be filled, and we're stuck on 49.
Wow. And what a change in the makeup of the Geelong Council.
Yeah.
Over the course of, recent months, perhaps over the course of the year. Elise is a social worker, an actor, climate advocate. I think she got elected under a group under the banner Put Climate First. Quite a change to kind of the political mindset and perhaps potentially priorities of City of Greater Geelong, as we've seen, those individuals move on in recent months. So really interesting, and to see what happens after in October 2024. Does that stay the case, or does the community sort of reinstall councillors of a similar view to the ones that they elected?
And I've just realised, Tony, I think I'm right in saying that the 3 resignations at Greater Geelong this term have all been women councillors standing down. The 3 replacements have all been women councillors coming in.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I'm not sure what that tells us, but there you go. Let's go into New South Wales for an IBAC story that's come out this week. They've been looking for some time into claims of corrupt conduct at the former Hurstville Council. This is one of the councils that got merged with others a few years back, and 3 councillors or former councillors have been found to have engaged in corrupt conduct.
Yeah, that's right. IBAC have found that 3 of those former councillors accepted cash and gifts from a property developer in return for favourable treatment over property proposals, and quite substantial payments to at least 2 of the councillors, $170,000 each. The ring familiar to Victorians who've read the Operation Sandon facts. Failures to declare conflicts of interest here, pecuniary interests that were not declared. One councillor's partner had an interest by way of being involved in a real estate agency that was promoting the development, stood to gain from if the development went ahead. The recommendations of IBAC, the New South Wales equivalent of our IBAC, quite similar to Operation Sandon recommendations, in part an amendment to the Model Code of Conduct, a requirement that where planning decisions depart from officer recommendations, there be reasons given. That's another consistent theme with Operation Sandon. So it doesn't seem to be confined to Victoria, this occasional issue that we see in local government. Yeah.
And people might be forgiven for thinking the New South Wales planning model with the panels, etc., was what we're aiming for out of Operation Sandon, but clearly there's still some issues in New South Wales that need to be resolved.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure of the timing of these facts versus the timing of the New South Wales planning decision regime. Was it in place at the time or not? But as you say, it hasn't. There continues and to be investigations by authorities,
and still recommendations for improvements to the framework, and I think a recommendation for consideration of further legal action in relation to those as well. Gold Coast, a quick update there. As we reported last week, and it's been all over the news, Councillor Ryan Belden Lumsden, charged with murder, has been granted bail this week, and as we record this morning, is still a councillor on Gold Coast City Council. The Mayor, Tom Tate, is looking to sit down with the councillor and see how he wants to proceed, is talking about perhaps enabling him to participate in council meetings online. Given that he's going to be on bail for some time, the trial, they're saying, is unlikely to start before 2025, and we're still waiting on the local government minister, who's also the deputy premier, to respond to take whatever action that he might want to take. He's said to be still waiting for definitive legal advice on the issue. Very unique set of circumstances, Tony.
Yeah, exactly. And we did say, I think last week, that Councillor Belden Lumsden's ability to perform his role as a councillor in the lead up to the criminal hearing would largely sort of turn on, was he remanded in custody or released on bail? And relatively unusually for a murder charge, he has been released on bail. He tends to plead not guilty. He's made that point. And so innocent until proven guilty is, of course, the presumption, but lots of public interest in the matter. So you can imagine there'd be lots of media, the councillor attending events, council meetings. It could be problematic, could potentially impact on other council operations. And so I can understand there's a discussion around a more virtual attendance moving forwards. And I understand that the Mayor, Tom Tate, said he was going to try and catch up in the next couple of days with the councillor in question and work through those issues, but pretty challenging position for that council moving forwards.
Tony, Tom Tate was asked, is this the most difficult or challenging thing you've had to deal with in your time as Mayor? And he said it would be in the top 5, which made me think, what might sit above this in your top 5?
He's in the news a bit, Tom Tate. He was in the news again this week. I think he said, I won't give me $1 billion and I'll run the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast. And he took a swipe at Dan Andrews, didn't he, in that article? That's right. I think he said it was un-Australian, which a word I hate. Something about reneging on contracts being un-Australian. Maybe he hasn't gone to the Supreme Court commercial list much because there's a fair bit of cases about contracts in there. But look, I consider there's a lot still to come out about the decision around the Commonwealth Games in Victoria, both to go in and the decision to get out and the costs. But it's interesting. Gold Coast Council seem to be pursuing this idea of holding the games, but I don't think the Queensland state government are on board. No. We'll have to wait and see. They're talking about Commonwealth Games. Of course, we note this week the hearing, the Senate inquiry, I think it was on Tuesday, was held in Bendigo. The Geelong Mayor was there. The Bass Coast Mayor was there, providing some insights into their experiences through that whole process. I was curious to note, Tony, that Bendigo opted not to appear, saying they didn't really feel that they had anything of value to contribute. And the comment was made that right up until the game's been cancelled, they weren't actually really clear on what their role was going to be. Yeah, did I hear it was so about the table tennis that so Geelong always sort of assumed and were pitching to hold the table tennis, and at some point City of Greater Geelong said, we'll need a place to do some for training facilities. We suggest somewhere outside of Geelong for training facilities, and it was assumed that Bendigo would be doing that, and suddenly Bendigo actually got told they were going to hold the event, and the table tennis teams and fraternity in Bendigo were like, oh wow, we didn't realise that was going to occur. So yeah, it kind of sheds a light on the whole process as being seemed pretty haphazard.
The word that was coming to my mind was shambolic.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I think is a very Australian rather than un-Australian word. Let's wrap up with your pick of the week. I know we don't often talk about the City of Melbourne, which is a bit odd, but they've agreed in principle this week to some new controls on short stay accommodation. Some people are saying it's not going to have much impact. It doesn't go far enough. It's sending a pretty clear message, though, isn't it? What do they want? 180-day per year cap and a registration fee of $350.
So Sally Capp, the mayor's come out and made a statement this week, and council has started a consultative process in relation to some changes to the local law. And as you say, the changes would require there to be a limit in the number of nights a short stay accommodation can be advertised on those Airbnb and stays type platforms. A 180-day limit, which is the same limit that applies in the city of Sydney. Interestingly, Sally Capp said Melbourne has more short stay accommodation than any other city in Australia. There's more than 4,000 short stay accommodation places. Of course, the short stay accommodation industry are against these kind of local law arrangements, and they're proposing more of a sort of a tourism levy from the state government that would then go into community infrastructure. What City of Melbourne are on about is, and Sally Capp said this quite eloquently, they're trying to encourage some of the owners of these premises to provide long stay rental accommodation by bringing in this limitation. And the difficulty that councils have typically here is, how do we police this? And I thought what was interesting was Sally Capp was asked this question by the ABC TV, and she said, well, fortunately in the City of Melbourne itself, most of these residences are in owners' corporations. So they're in, high-rise buildings, if you like. So the owners' corporations know what's going on, and they can sort of report it to council, if you like. So there is that level of oversight or insight into what's going on. But this is consistent with what's happened in Brisbane, what's happened in Hobart. I think other places in Victoria, Warrnambool comes to mind as well. But a number of councils have sought to regulate short stay accommodation arrangements, and now with the rising focus on the housing shortage and the long-term rental accommodation shortage, I think that's another reason for councils to be acting here.
Yeah. All right, we'll wait and see what happens after that consultation process. I see the Chamber's come out and said it's a disincentive to tourism, so we know what their position's going to be. All right, Tony, that's brought me to the end of the list. Anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
No, Chris, I look forward to another action-packed week, I think.
Yes, there's never a dull moment, is there, in local government? I'm sure we'll have more to talk about next week. So thank you for that, as always, for your insights. Thank you to the team at Hunt & Hunt Lawyers for their support for TGU and VLGA Connect. And I'll look forward to catching up with you again next week, Tony.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, folks. See you again.
That's VLGA Connect and TGU for Friday, the 1st of September. And we'll be back with more soon. Don't forget, Local Leaders, new episodes coming out a couple of weeks. And they're really offering some great insights into some of the people in leadership roles around local government in Victoria. Catch up on those and we'll see you soon. Bye.